Good afternoon from the Gambia. My name is Mar Nyang, the Executive Director and founder of Gambia Participate, and I'm glad to welcome you in this OGP partner session that we are having, co-hosted by us at Gambia Participate and International Republican Institute and the People Powered. Today, we will be discussing about the budget, and we will be having this discussion at a time when most countries are about to get their budgets off the ground by January 1st, while others have already started their fiscal year for 2022. We were talking about participatory budgeting, exploring the challenges at the local level, the most important level. So today we have some experts in this field from different parts of the world. We have Binta Toure from the International Republican Institute Gambia office, Sophia Arsi, who's working with the mayor office in Cuenca, Ecuador. And then also we are having Joe's Lana, and I will get to each other's biography and then read that in detail. So just a quick update. We have live interpretation in Spanish, and the Spanish button is right on the bottom right. You can click on it and then choose the Spanish option if you wanted to get this live interpretation. And I will just now like to introduce the speakers and get to each other's bios. And so this is going to be interactive and interesting. And if you have questions, please put them in the chat. We will get into the Q&A session. And please, if you are asking your questions, you might want to direct the questions to either the name of the speaker, or if it is general, also just put it out there and we will get to it. And to get to the panelists, we have Binta Toure. Like I said, Binta is the program officer for IRI Gambia and has been with IRI for 2 years now. Binta has overseen and implemented a wide range of USG-funded projects in the Gambia, which focus on fiscal transparency around the Gambia's national budget and as well transparent management of natural resources, both from the extractive and the non-extractive industry. And he has also been working with the National Assembly on budget issues, the political parties and civil society, and also constitutional and electoral, among others. Binta's management of IRI's fiscal transparency projects over the years has contributed to the Gambia's meeting the minimum standard of the U.S. Department of Fiscal Transparency report. And she holds a postgraduate degree in management studies from the Institute of Commercial Management, ICM, in UK. And next is Sophia Arsi. Sophia Arsi is an Ecuadorian professional of international cooperation and international relations. She graduated in international studies from the University of Cuenca, Ecuador, and in international business from the Pompeu Fabra University of Barcelona, which is in Spain. She complementary training in decentralized cooperation and management of development projects. And she has worked with different international organizations in dual technical education, centering of small, medium enterprise SMEs, intermediate cities, and sustainable development. She is currently the Director of International Relations and Cooperation in the Mayor's Office in Cuenca, Ecuador. Impressive. And next on the line, we have Jos Lana. Jos is the Executive Director of PeoplePowered, and he has spent the past 20 years developing, researching, and supporting participatory democracy programs around the world. Before he started the PeoplePowered organization, he served as the Executive Director of the Participatory Budgeting Project, PBP, a nonprofit organization that has been empowering people to decide together how to spend public money across the US and that of Canada. And through his work, 534,000 people in 30 cities directly decided from the grassroots how to spend $337 million US. Just completed a PhD in politics at the New School for Social Research and Masters in Planning from the University of Toronto. And he's the author of the books, Making Democracy Fun, How Game Decide Can Empower Citizens and Transform Politics, and Everyone Counts. Could participatory budgeting change democracy? And dozens of other articles. So these are the experts we have today for this session, and I'm really excited looking at their backgrounds and their CVs with the experience that they have in participatory budgeting. We will be exploring the challenges of participatory budgeting from the local level, but most importantly as well, the solutions to these challenges as we move forward towards this webinar. And I would like to start with Binta Toure from the Gambia, and my question will be going straight to Binta to kick off. So Binta, the Gambia's public budgeting system is really a top-bottom approach with limited opportunity for citizens to make inputs from the formulation level of the national budget. But however, civil societies in the Gambia, they've been facilitating open budget dialogues between parliamentarians and the Ministry of Finance and citizens through the IRI Gambia Support. So I would like you to tell us, Binta, how this support program from the International Republican Institute that you have overseen contributes towards Gambia meeting the minimum fiscal transparency requirement.
All right, thank you very much, Mar. Good morning and good afternoon to my fellow panelists and all the participants on this call. I'm really excited to be part of this important conversation. So yes, like you rightly said, IRI, since inception in the Gambia, have been implementing a project around fiscal transparency, which looks at promoting transparency as well as participation in the national budget process. And in doing this, like you said, in the last 2021 report of the State Department Fiscal Transparency Report, the Gambia for the first time met the minimum requirement for fiscal transparency. And what this implies is that the country's national, because those are one of the requirements stated by this State Department assessment. So the national budget, especially the executive budget proposal, is publicly available, and we have seen that initiative being taken up by our Ministry of Finance since the 2021 budget cycle. In addition to that, it also states that the national budget should be reliable, it should be substantially complete. So when it talks about the substantially completion part, that encompasses a lot of things, and that includes some state-owned enterprises and also related authorities. But since we are talking about participatory budgeting, we would like to highlight that resulting from IRI's intervention, the achievement, if I may put it that way, that led to the success of meeting the minimum requirement is actually centered around the different activities that we implemented, and that includes multi-stakeholder forums. So like you said, we have seen a lot of increased engagement between civil society and minister gaps that are actually in the budget formulation or the budget cycle. And again, from also research that we have conducted, there is evidence that there's currently very limited, if not even citizen participation in the budget formulation process. So these are gaps that, through CSO's engagement with the Ministry of Finance and also the local government area level, because they also play a crucial role when you're talking about inclusion and also citizen participation, because they are the representative of the central government at the local area level. And then we are glad to report that in the case of the Gambia, compared to previous years, which you will agree with me, Mar, there has been major gaps when it comes to the local government area councils and their budgeting process. But again, thanks to reforms being undertaken by the Ministry of Finance, like I said, specifically the Public Finance Management Directorate, they have a strategy document 2021-2025, and this has some reform pillars, and one of the reform pillars, which is pillar number 6, specifically talks about reform of the LGAs. And this reform, they actually look at a budgetary reform, as well as access to the government's integrated financial management system, which is the IFMIS, which is an online system. Until recently, even the LGAs were not using this system due to some gaps and some challenges in terms of internet and etc. But as part of this PFM reform, we have now seen progress being made, that the IFMIS system has now been rolled out to the LGAs, but also the budgetary reform has also started, which is looking at to ensure that effective participatory approach to planning, aligning resource allocation to priorities, and also to instill fiscal discipline in all the LGAs is done. And this, they anticipate that will be achieved by putting in place credible and reliable budgeting system in the LGAs that will help in the formulation of responsive budgets. And they have actually started this by ensuring that every LGA has a budget officer and a budget unit. And also these personnel are actually trained on their roles and their duties. And also there are relevant policy documents such as budget framework paper for the LGAs. So definitely we now have seen, great improvement being done. And also through, like you said, one of the successes also is that community outreaches that we have, IRI has done in partnership with Gambia Participates, actually going to the grassroots with the National Assembly members, sensitizing the communities why they should be interested in the national budget, why it is important and how it impacts in their lives. And this will help to educate the people also to know what they should expect from their public officials. And we have seen that this is also building up, awareness, and this will also help, for these citizens to be able to hold these officials to account. So this community outreaches that Gambia Participates has done, and from the testimonies we heard from the people, that some of them even saying, this is the first time I am hearing about the importance of the national budget or what it can do to change our lives in the communities. So I think these are all initiatives through IRI support that have really built up, and we are hoping that even post IRI intervention, national stakeholders that have taken part in these events, such as civil society, the local government area councils, because I'll stop here, then maybe when time allows, we can talk further in terms of other initiatives that are taken in budget sensitization to build communities' interest and participation in the process. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Binda, for sharing that experiences with us here. And I will move to Sophia. Sophia, you've been working with the mayor's office in Cuenca. And I just want you to tell us the experiences and the challenges in engaging constituents of Cuenca in order to develop a citizen-centric fiscal budget. What has been some of the experience working with the Cuenca Ecuador mayor's office?
Sure, thank you, Mar. Well, first, I would like to salute you all. My name is Sofia Arce. I work for the municipality of Cuenca. In order you to know where is Cuenca. Cuenca, it is located in Ecuador, Latin America. It is the third city of importance and population in Ecuador. It has 600 inhabitants. And well, talking about participatory budgeting, Cuenca was one of the first cities in Ecuador to implement participatory budgeting. We have two phases when we talk about participatory budgeting in Cuenca. One on the rural parish and the second one on the urban parish. Today, to talk about the challenge, I will focus more on the rural, but well, we can, I will explain both processes. Well, first, since 2001, the 21 rural parishes in Cuenca have participated at the participatory budgeting programs. Millions of dollars have been delivered through this process, from 1.2 million in 2001 to $19.5 million in 2020, sorry. Due to that, this is a very successful program and the people demand it a lot. This participatory process have achieved an inclusive and also an intergenerational interest on women, men, young adults, citizens in general, local business, the academia, international organizations. And according to data of the municipality of Cuenca, almost 20% of the population has participated directly in this process, with 60% of the attendants that were women. That it's very important for us to have this participation from women. And this is in the rural sector. But if we talk on the urban parish in Cuenca, well, it is a process where the neighborhood leaders, organization of citizens participate and present the proposals and meet in an open dialogue. On this open dialogue, well, the municipality receives all the information, analyzes it, and determines the feasibility. And then in a second assembly, the citizens decide by vote what are the public services and the public interventions that are going to be implemented the next year. And well, that on the urban, but on the rural parish are the the ones who has the duty to organize these neighborhood assemblies per year, and then call a general assembly where the following year public interventions are going to be prioritized. It's important also you to know that on these citizen assemblies, also we decide citizen overseas that are elected between the ones of the parish who will have a monitoring of the process, will follow up the process with the municipality, and will be the ones in charge to deliver information of if these works and projects are well executed. Well, to talk about the challenge also on the urban sector, I can say that there is a lack of resources, economic resources, to implement all the public service and public interventions that the that the citizens want. But there is an important participation of the citizens at these general assemblies. Also, I believe that it is very important that all the heads of the municipality departments participate in all these assemblies on the 15 parish, urban parish, so we can hear by first hand what are the needs, what are the necessities. And we didn't stop this process due to the pandemic. We started having these assemblies by Zoom and online resources like these ones. And what has happened due to the lack of resources is that we had to reprioritize once again the public service that have already been decided in order to work with the resources that we have right now. And well, the principal ask of the population was roads resurfacing, complaints about the garbage picking service, public interventions in parks, cultural and sport activities. But it has been a process where, as I said, has been a lot of participation of the citizens. But what is happening right now on the rural sector, and that was on the theme that I want to emphasize, is that the limited budget is not only one of the challenges that we have on the rural sector. I will say that the principal problem is that the needs are basic needs. For example, the provision of drinking water, a sewage system, infrastructure that, is basic for the population of the rural sectors. And in words of one of the president of a rural parish, he says that sometimes this rural parish prioritize a recreational court in order to practice sports before a planning process that can include feasibility studies for the implementation of a sewage system. So we have prior a space to practice sport than a sewage system. This has also generated a sense of false expectations in the population of the rural sector because they have voted for different public services like provision of drinking water, but are prioritizing or doesn't have the studies, the feasibility studies for this system. So they cannot be implemented. So citizens have lost the interest in participating in these assemblies. And one thing that I believe that has to be corrected is that many times the rural parish doesn't understand the whole process of these big interventions, big public interventions to bring public service, basic public service as drinking water. So they have to, they need a bigger follow-up of the municipality in order that they know the technical process. And also another thing that has been happening, has been happening is that sometimes this process has become more a political process than a technical process. So it's a space where, well, many political leaders have directed the process, but not necessarily in order to follow the needs of the population. And another thing that I believe that could be implemented, and it's a challenge, is that could be more options in order that the citizens participate in this participatory budgeting process, like, for example, digital tools. On the rural sector, there is enough connectivity, internet connectivity, so it limits the participatory process. Well, that are some of the issues that I wanted to present. We can talk more about this process during this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sophia. Definitely, I think with the data that you have given and the experience in having a up approach in developing a citizen-centric budget, and I think these are some quite very interesting key areas that you have mentioned. So during the conversation, those things will come up in the form of a question. So we will move to Jos. I mean, I just want to ask you this question. You have a quite number of years of experience in participatory budget and supporting participatory democracy. So in the past 20 years of your work focusing on these areas, you must have come across some challenges, although Sophia have made mention of those, but I just wanted to ask, these challenges that you have come across that have been regarding participatory budgeting, can you highlight what some of these challenges are, and obviously some of the solutions to these challenges?
Yes, definitely, Amar. And I think we'll be sharing a screen too. Perfect. So yeah, I really appreciate hearing about the challenges that Sophia and Binta mentioned. And this work is really hard. Yeah, I've been working on participatory budgeting for the past 20 years or so. At every level, as a resident participant, it's hard. As people in government and organizations, it's hard. For elected officials, it's hard. But also it's so important now as people feel really disconnected from democracy and they really need to have a lot of issues addressed. So I'm going to step back and talk about some of the challenges and solutions that we're seeing around the world for participatory budgeting. So hopefully we'll speak to some of the issues that Sophia and Binta raised. And for brief introduction for our organization, PeoplePowered, our mission is to expand people's power to make government decisions by supporting organizations and governments that are building participatory democracy around the world. So basically supporting all of you out there who are trying to do this very hard but also important work. And so we serve as a global hub for participatory democracy with a lot of focus on participatory budgeting. And I'll explain more about the work that we do in a bit. But I want to start by talking about the challenges and referring to a global research and co-design process that's focused on identifying the common participatory budgeting challenges around the world. And this was led by the group Reboot in 2018 with funding from the Hewlett Foundation. And you can see online also the results of this report here, which I'll be referring to on co-designing the future of the participatory budgeting movement. And the research and this process was a year-long experience doing research in 4 different cities, extensive research there, and then bringing together practitioners, people in government and organizations from around the world to assess together what are the main challenges of participatory budgeting and what should we do about them. That included looking at who are the key actors and their needs. So stepping back and assessing the different people that are necessary to make PB work and identifying what they want, their roles in the process. This is an example of one of the key actors kind of profile that Reboot developed to better understand really how we address people's challenges. And the result was 6 common challenges, some of which relate to what Sophia and Binta were sharing. So a lot of people think that what they're experiencing is their own local challenge. What we found is that a lot of these challenges are common across sites. So the first one, it's unclear if PB is the right fit. Often PB is imposed or suggested because it sounds good, but actually the situation isn't appropriate, and that's setting yourself up to fail. The second one was limited relevant guidance for implementers. But even though there's lots of research and reports, it's still really hard for someone working in a local government to figure out who to talk with, what guides to use, what process to look at, and that they don't have access to the knowledge they need to succeed. The third challenge was empty top-down mandates. So around half of PB processes around the world are in countries that have a national mandate for participatory budgeting. And PeoplePowered actually just released a report yesterday as part of the OGP Summit looking at these national PB laws, which you can find on our website at peoplepowered.org. And what we found is that these national mandates encourage a lot of PB, but not always high quality PB, because there's a mandate, but not the support to do it well. The fourth challenge was labor intensive coordination. But as Sophia said, it's so hard to engage residents who have often limited time, limited access to technology, and to resources, to work with the city agencies, to work with local civil society organizations. It's a lot of work bringing together these different actors. The fifth challenge is limited participation. So people often do all this work and then not enough people show up. And then they get frustrated, and sometimes the programs are even suspended or canceled. And the last common challenge is slow or stalled implementation of funded projects. So this is where you have a vote, but then the government doesn't actually implement the projects in a timely manner, and people get disillusioned or disappointed with the process, and they stop participating because they don't see things being done. So again, these are common challenges across countries that are using PB, and they're hard to address. PeoplePowered has been trying to develop some solutions though for these challenges. And we started out from this report and from this process that Reboot led. The recommendation was to establish a global PB hub, and we then launched that and then expanded that out beyond participatory budgeting to other kinds of participatory democracy as well. These are our staff and boards, and what we're trying to do is bring together people doing this work around the world to identify and develop common solutions to common challenges. This started out in 2019 by creating a global PB hub. These are our first meetings before COVID when we were able to meet in person. And creating a couple global boards. So one, Practitioner Board, people in government and civil society organizations that are implementing PB. And their role is to identify priorities for new resources, new tools for PB implementers, for governments and organizations, and then develop and share resources and tools that address these priorities. So it's a kind of research and development R&D function of developing and sharing tools to address needs. And then we also developed a PB research board to help align research with needs on the ground so that researchers are doing research that addresses practical needs. The research board developed a global PB research agenda and then has been implementing that agenda. For example, by developing a theory of change for participatory budgeting, compiling data on impacts of PB. You can find all of this on our website, again, peoplepowered.org. And so I want to talk through a few of these specific solutions. And these were all developed by our boards and members. We're a membership-based organization. Our members are organizations around the world who are building, supporting, implementing participatory democracy. And they vote on what we do actually and how we spend our money. So we practice PB within the organization. We just had a big vote last week actually to decide our budget for next year. One of the first projects that was prioritized was an online resource center of the best practical tools and resources. And what people said is that it's still hard to find the right information. That there's sites that have everything in the world, but what people want is not everything. It's not, they want a recommended reading list. They don't want the full library. And so we did the work of prioritizing what are the best resources, the best videos, the best toolkits, the best example materials. And those are all in the online resource center in different languages. A second thing, and this gets into the work that we're doing with IRI and that we're excited to support in Ecuador and in the Gambia and elsewhere, is to make it easier to have effective and equitable digital participation, especially during COVID, when it's harder to reach people in person. A lot of PB programs are really failing to engage people online in inclusive ways. People with the least access to technology are left on the sidelines, and this is not just, it's not equitable. And so the project that our members prioritized last year for us, the top priority was to develop a guide and recommendations around digital participation platforms for PB processes and other similar processes. And we finished that. We'll be launching that in January, so in the next month, to help cities select better participatory platforms. Great. Oops, sorry, go ahead. And then the other project that we're working on with IRI is called Participation Playbook. And this is an interactive online tool to help cities make key design decisions when planning a PB process or other participatory process, walking them through the key choices they need to make so that you can have processes that are more effective based on research, based on evidence from elsewhere. And then a few areas of other support that our members prioritize. One is a kind of global learning program called PeoplePowered University. And so we've been building out with our members around the world the best guidance for how to address common challenges. For example, how to engage disabled people or immigrants and refugees in PB, and sharing and then implementing those recommendations. And then I think the last one here is a mentorship program. And this again was prioritized by our members, that often you just want to talk with someone who's done the thing you're trying to do and can give you personal guidance on it. And so we have a mentorship program that matches people around the world. It's free. Anyone is welcome to apply. And that can match you to someone who has launched PB to help you support your program. So I will close there. You can find, again, more information about all of these on our website. But we're really excited to offer these programs to you and to collaborate with local partners, such as in the Gambia and in Ecuador, to really address these common challenges together, because they're often really hard to address at the local level, but if we work together, we can find solutions for them. So thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you very much. Just to remind our fellow audience that you can ask questions to either Sophia, Jos, or Binta on the chat, and then we will pick it up and then ask those questions. But while we're waiting for those questions, I just wanted to get to Binta, our first speaker. Binta, I mean, you've highlighted some of the successes that the Gambia has registered in meeting the minimum requirement of fiscal transparency, and this also could be some of the credit could be given to civil society and the work that they have done. So my question or follow-up question is, what support can NGOs and civil society organizations provide during this participatory budget process, both from the central level and at the local level as well?
Yes, thank you very much, Mar. I think the support, like I said, it's something that has to be around the budget literacy. As you would agree with me, that is something that has come up in a lot of activities that we implemented, people understanding of even, why a national budget. And when you go to the local level, local government area level also, why even a local government? And then when it comes to budgeting, how does it come back to the community? So I think there has to be a lot of sensitization around that, as well as civic awareness. because you will see that at the local area level, there is a little bit of lack of ownership of some of the community members when it comes to the operations of the local government. And I think that limits their participation in the budgetary process, because like I said, our engagements with them, and even like just said, in piloting the PB, we actually talked to one of the biggest LGAs in the Gambia, which is the Carnifing Municipal Council, and they did inform us that they did a similar exercise 2 years ago, wherein they actually reached out to the communities and they were able to, identify priorities and, prepare a report. So that report basically since then is what they have been using to prepare their annual budget. So it's not something that they have been able to do, let's say annually, to take note of maybe prevailing circumstances. But again, they did state that, lack of resources is also one of the limitations why they are unable to do frequent consultations. So I think for me, building capacity is very key. And this has actually come up also in the PFM, that is the project, the Public Finance Management Progress Report, that there isn't sufficient capacity when you go to the level of the local government area councils in terms of human, in terms of also the financial resources. So this is something probably NGOs can look into in building specifically the capacity, because I think if capacity is built, then the rest in terms of operations will be made easy. And at the national level also, I think it's more on consultation with the LGAs, because we've also had this report that they feel left out, but because even the budget process, the budget formulation process, they said their process actually is in September, when already, the Ministry of Finance has already concluded its consultation period, supposedly with the LGA. So that is something that is currently maybe not really to the level that would benefit or would be, very crucial for the LGAs to be in line with the actual process of the Ministry of Finance. So understanding around the national budget and also building capacity are very key areas that we the LGAs and also the national government.
Thank you very much, Binta. And I just let me move to Sophia. Sophia, you've given some very interesting data in terms of the participation of community constituents in the Cuenca municipality, and I mean 20% directly engaging in this process. And you've also mentioned that there are some challenges in terms of understanding the technical process of this, and sometimes that actually retards also, like I say, their inputs in bringing in meaningful inputs. But with all these successes and that you have registered, is there any time where participatory budgeting in the Cuenca municipality help in communities in identifying a major project that was funded through this process?
Yes. Well, the municipality has a department. It is a governability department that coordinates also with the urban and with the rural parish in order to prioritize and coordinate these assemblies. And also there are NGOs that have been participating in this process. But I believe that there is need technical training for the ones, especially on the rural parish, to understand this process, to prioritize also the service that they need. Yes, and also in words of one of the heads of this rural parish is that they have also to understand that the participatory budgeting also has a vision of how they plan these rural sectors. No, if the community is growing and they need more services, well, they need to prioritize the feasibility studies in order to build the sewage system, to provide drinking water, to have roads, because sometimes they prioritize another kind of public works, because as it is also a political process, they need that the population saw the big building. I see that Josh is saying yes. Well, it's a process. I understand that it happens in another parts of the world, but well, that has been the experience here in Cuenca. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophia. Josh, so you've mentioned one thing I believe that stood out for me in your presentation, and that's the question whether participatory budgeting is the right fit. And in so many cases, government do take those excuses to say, well, we have a pre-budget statement that have already outlined the government's plan in the next short term, let's say 5 years. And the executive budget proposal is always built on that particular pre-budget statement. And as a result, they ask this question, well, the citizens can comment with their inputs, but it's not in line with what we are working. So in the development of this, of your participatory budgeting playbook, is this something else that you wanted to also incorporate so that there also could be some technical answers to government's excuses in terms of limiting citizen participation because of they already have a system that is being built from the decision-making level?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. We want to make sure that when a government starts a program that it's going to succeed and that it's the right program for what the local situation is, and they're not just doing it because it sounds good. And so, for example, for participatory budgeting, obviously you need a budget. You need money to allocate. And if the government doesn't actually have money that it will enable residents to allocate, then it's not going to be a very good program, and it may do more harm than good. And so that's a really important issue. The word participatory budgeting has been used to describe lots of things around the world. And sometimes it's used to describe programs that really don't share much power with residents, that are just consultations. And but then governments expect the same results from that, even though what they're doing is very different from what happens in Brazil or in Cuenca or elsewhere. And this has been one of the biggest research findings that I can't emphasize enough, that you don't get good outcomes just by calling something participatory budgeting. You get the outcomes by sharing real power over real decisions, by supporting residents, by bringing together different people, organizations, city departments. That's the work that needs to happen. And so for the participation playbook, that's where we want to start, is being real about what the government is committing to, and having a shared understanding of the process. So if you're doing participatory budgeting, that means that there's a part of the budget that residents are actually going to be able to decide. And you define that and you share real power. You don't just ask for input, because then you get into some of the problems that Sophia mentioned, where people stop participating, they get disillusioned with the process, they don't see the impacts. And this is hard even in cities that do a good process. But if you start out without having real money, it's not going to be very effective. So yeah, I just want to emphasize how important that is, to have a clear definition of what you're doing and not just use the terms because they sound good, but to actually go through the whole process, share real power. That's the only way that you're going to address these challenges.
Thank you, Josh. I mean, for me, I think sometimes when you engage governments, they do say, well, we have an open budget dialogue, and they consider it to be participatory. But for me, I believe meaningful participatory budgeting has to be open, not just to a limited number of people. So sometimes they could just identify local government authorities or just limited number of civil society, instead of opening up the conversation for the people that really matters to come on this discussion and then give these make inputs. But most importantly as well, getting back to the people and explaining to them how their inputs were received, which ones were implemented, and how others will be implemented. So these feedbacks also are super important for citizens to get to understand that yes, government is responding to their needs. So just, you want to say something about it?
Yeah, and actually I want to ask a question of Sophia as well that relates to this. I think it's a really important point you raised around kind of who is involved and at what levels. And so I wanted to highlight something that Sophia mentioned, and maybe she can speak more about that, that ordinary residents participate in some things, and then neighborhood or community organizations participate in other things. And that's a very difficult balance to have. How do you decide at what level, what is for representatives of the community and what is for everyone? What's public? And my understanding, Sophia, was that there's kind of those two levels. There's some things that are for the representatives of civil society organizations, and then there's some things that are for a public vote. But that's one of the challenges and tensions that also relates to what you were saying, Mar. I wonder if you could say more about how you decide who is involved at what level, and the relationship between organizations and all the residents.
Sophia, so it will be important if you can maybe perhaps give her an experience just to build on what Josh has asked in terms of your engagement with the constituents, the stakeholders, civil society, and activists, and then also the ordinary people. So maybe if you can give us some of those experiences at the Cuenca municipality level, that would be great.
Sure. Well, I was talking more about what it is between the rural parish and the urban parish. In both spaces, all the citizens that want to participate can participate, but the problem, I believe, is especially in the on the rural parish, not because of the participation of the NGOs, the academia, or other sectors. I believe that the bigger problem is that first, they don't consider the limited budget that they have. The municipality has a methodology in order to define what will be the budget of each one of these 21 rural parish. And many times they do not limit the public service that they want to that budget. So, well, it generates, as I was talking before, false expectations, because they already vote in these general assemblies, and every citizen can vote and decide what will be the intervention that will be developed the next year. But the big problem is that probably is not of the competences of, it's not of the legal work of the rural parish. For example, formal education. Formal education is of the Ministry of Education in Ecuador. That will be one of the biggest problems. Budget and the process, and as I said before, feasibility studies ability.
Thank you, Sophia. Just to remind the participants that you can still continue to get in your questions in the Q&A session before I move to Binta. Binta, I mean, looking at the International Budget Partnerships Open Budget Survey report that was published in 2019, I believe that is the last report before the subsequent one will be published. The Gambia's public participation on the budget, I mean, is a score of 9 out of 100. And most of these initiatives are led by civil society, taking the parliamentarians to their constituency. And you've mentioned in your presentation, most of the participants that actually get engaged, they go to hear the budget in for the first time. And that also, to add on what Sophia has been saying, that the lack of knowledge in the technical process, and also the awareness there is an existence of a budget. You can only get to understand the process for you to be able to be part of the process to participate meaningfully. So I know this public finance management reform is going on, but what would be your suggestion having this also incorporated in the constitution so that it will become mandatory for the government and that of the local government authorities to engage citizens during the formulation of the budget? Binta, I think you are muted.
Oh, no, I am not. Hello?
We can hear you now.
Okay, great, yeah. Okay, thank you. Yes, so like I was saying, yes, so these are actually gaps, and as well as efforts that the relevant authorities are aware of, and they're really putting in mechanisms to address them. As you would agree with me, in the earlier this year, there has been initiatives taken by even civil society to actually do something on their own that was centered around the budget we want 2022. So, I mean, civil society coming together and discussing these are the priorities that we want. And that initiative also included, having a voice pop, somebody going around countrywide, even to all the LGA, the regions, talking to people, ordinary people. What are the priorities? What do they want to see in the coming 2022, and those avenues actually get to hear people's thinking and people's stance when it comes to the national budget. So civil society being the watchdog of the government, I think when they take up these initiatives, they also hear what people are saying. They can add these to their advocacy and their campaign strategies. So I think for, like you mentioned, having it as a legal instrument, currently, it is not mandated actually for there to be that consultation by the minister, that is at the central level, the Ministry of Finance, to consult with citizens in the budget formulation. But these are, like I said, initiatives and recommendations that are being presented to the Ministry of Finance, and also the LGAs, like I said, at their own level. We have seen a lot of improvements. Like I shared, the KMC, they have actually taken the initiative. And other LGAs, even those in the rural Gambia, they have also taken initiative and confirmed with us that they do actually consult with their communities to some extent. But like I said, some of the impeding gaps actually make it impossible for them to make it a very frequent process. But the efforts are there, and I think, like I said, as part of the PFM reform, when the needed capacity, the needed support, the needed resources are provided for these LGAs, they will definitely take up, because the willingness is there. And I think also guided by civil society, also pushing for these reforms through their different campaigns and advocacy strategies. I think we will get to see a lot of this happening. And unfortunately, if it weren't that the new draft constitution was rejected, this was something that was there, that the National Assembly, should do public consultations. And I think that would have been something in the right direction that would have started from the grassroots to the National Assembly level. But I'm sure in the not near future, something like this would definitely be taken up by the respective authorities.
Thank you, Binta. I just wanted to first perhaps share this point and then ask a question. I think when there is a structured participatory budgeting process, that is also another strategy in increasing revenue, in a sense that the ones that are paying the tax are given the opportunity to decide how their money are going to be used. So it will increase tax collection, tax payment, and it also means increase in revenue for the government, be it the central or that of the local government. So my question to you perhaps is, don't you think also participatory budgeting events or open budget dialogue should be something that should be structured? Because sometimes it could be just open and people coming up with different inputs, different suggestions, and these inputs perhaps could not be visible in the upcoming fiscal year. So don't you think also government should also structure such, and then maybe perhaps put out the agenda, what should be discussed, in what areas, and the likes?
Yes, definitely. And first, there has been research that's shown that participatory budgeting increases tax revenues, increases willingness and interest in paying taxes, which makes sense. People will pay taxes if they think it's going to go to something good. If they think it's going to be wasted, why pay taxes? And so that's one of the biggest potential benefits, is actually increasing tax revenues. But you will only see that if people think that their voice has been heard, if they think that they had a real say, if they understand the process, if it's transparent, if, as you say, if it's well structured. If not, then they can be disappointed and they won't want to pay more taxes or increase revenue. And so that's why it is so important to have the process have a clear structure, not just be an open-ended question of what do you want, but to be very clear, as Sophia was saying, about the technical constraints, about different needs, bigger picture planning needs. How do you connect long-term essential infrastructure planning with shorter-term decision-making? And so that education piece is really important to let people know, how much money is available, how much do things cost, what can realistically be done, what's already happening, and then ask them what they want so it can be an informed decision. If it's an uninformed decision, then it can lead to a lot of frustration. It's easy to do this poorly if you don't plan it and have a good structure for those discussions.
Definitely, I think the bottom line also there is budget education. I think most of the time, if you go to the communities and you talk about the budget and then these figures, for me, the experience has been really a learning point for me, because you get in there and they talk about billions, and these are some of the people might not even get to know what a billion is. So you have to break down these numbers to their local language and then give them practical example of what makes up a billion. So I think education, budget education is key in this area, and also sometimes perhaps not only educating them on the budget, but also on the expenditure of the government. Once they get to know where the government is expending, what is that they are prioritizing, that will also catapult the interest of the citizens coming into play, and then fractioning government's priorities as against to that of the citizens. So maybe I would just give each 30 seconds, starting from Binta, if there's anything that you wanted to share before we wrap up. In 30 seconds, please.
Yes, thank you very much. Just to say, I'm happy to be part of this discussion and really applaud the initiatives. So definitely, as we all play a part in improving participatory democracy. And I think we should definitely look at available support for the LGAs, because I think if they are also strengthened, it would actually make the work of the central government much more easier. And like Mar said, I mean, carrying the people along, and this can only be done when they know, like I said, their civic duties and their civic rights, and they actually are able to participate in the process. Because if they don't know, if they are not educated, there wouldn't be that interest to actually say, I need to do this because it would benefit me in this area and that area. So I think that engagement, that capacity building at all levels should actually continue, and also encouraging dialogue and collaboration between these officials and the people to know that they are actually working as partners for the development of their respective councils. So once again, thank you, and I hope that we will get to continue this conversation, looking at possibilities and also other support areas. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sophia, in 30 seconds, please.
Yes, thank you. Well, I wanted to thank International Republic Institute for this opportunity, and I also want to speak a little bit about that participatory budgeting has to go by the hand with transparency and how this budget is expended. As municipality of Cuenca, we have a department who is in charge of all the transparency. So we publish on the internet, is available to all the citizens, the information of what has been invested on the budget, not only the participatory budget, but the whole budget of the municipality. And also prior to approve the next year budget, we have a general assembly where all the citizens are invited to be informed, to ask about what will be invested the municipal budget. So only that transparency has to go by hand with participatory budgeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophia. Just we're out of time, so if you can just do this in a very quick way, I would highly appreciate it.
Yeah, just that the work that you are doing is more important now than ever, and it's been very hard to do now with the pandemic. So that's when I emphasize you're not alone. These are challenges that are common across different places, and just invite you to help address these challenges together, so that we can have people have a real say in how their government works.
Thank you very much, everyone. I would like to thank the International Development Institute, PeoplePowered Gambia Support for organizing this summit, and also our panelists for the expert inputs in this, coming up with the challenges and also the solutions. And I would like to wrap up with one message that I would like people to keep asking for those that are watching on Facebook and also participant on this call. And I will steal this quote from the International Budget Partnership, and that is, keep telling government, don't tell us what you value, show us your budget, and we will tell you what you value. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.